Paul Jernigan, who died in 1993, he'd look at the mill and say, "Hey, I told you,
Yeah.
you could have saved a lot of space
Uh-huh.
though if you would have built up." And so when I look at the Mill 1 today, now we've built the Mill
The
2,
second
which
one,
is about as large as Mill 1 is, um, I think of Paul Jernigan, and I think this is the 21st century version
Yes.
of Centerpoint Tower.
You heard that there. That's the president and curator of the Mishawaka Historical Museum, Pete DeKever, talking about how a present-day apartment complex in Mishawaka ended up fulfilling a vision that a prominent local architect presented almost 60 years ago. More of that later, but first, thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. My name is Matt Emery, and I'm a local history nerd. My main mission in this podcast, as well as other Round the Bend material, is to create engaging content that shares how intertwined the South Bend and Mishawaka area's past is to our present. In the podcast, I interview local leaders, business owners, and community members to help tell their stories, because their stories help tell the story of South Bend and Mishawaka. Imagine driving through downtown Mishawaka today and seeing a 33-story tower rising above the river, towering over churches, stretching higher than any other building by far, and glowing at night with illustrated stained glass panels that told the story of St. Joseph County in Mishawaka. It sounds impossible now, but in the 1960s, one local architect believed that it could happen. His name was Paul Jernigan, a lifelong Mishawakan, a nationally respected architect, and he had a vision that would have completely transformed downtown Mishawaka. At the center of it all was Centerpoint Tower, a futuristic skyscraper featuring apartments, offices, a revolving restaurant, observation decks, and even a swimming pool in the sky. But the tower was only one part of an even bigger dream. Department stores, pedestrian malls, new bridges, civic plazas, an entirely reimagined downtown that Jernigan believed could make Mishawaka the true center of the St. Joseph Valley. Today, I sit down with local Mishawaka historian and the president and curator of the Mishawaka Historical Museum, Pete DeKever, whose book, Lost Mishawaka, includes an incredible chapter on Centerpoint Tower and the ambitious vision behind it. Together, we explore the dream, the politics, the skepticism, and the what-if story of the Mishawaka landmark that never was. And before we get started, I want to thank the sponsors of this episode: In Rug Co. Studio and Gift Shop, the Mishawaka Historical Museum, and Danbury Insurance. Please be sure to support local businesses and organizations that support local history storytelling. And now, here's our interview with Pete DeKever about the Mishawaka skyscraper that never was. We're sitting here with Pete DeKever once again, and Pete, I think this might be like the fifth time. In my head, let's see, we did an episode on the Mishawaka Historical Museum. We've done one on the 100th anniversary of Mishawaka High School. We've done one on Steel Stadium bleachers at Mishawaka High School. We did one on the Twin Branch Power Plant and Dam, and now we're here again.
Yes, all five.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. That's 10%. I've done about 52 episodes. That's 10%.
Well, it's my privilege to be here, Matt. So
I appreciate it for sure. I definitely appreciate it. And we're here to talk again about a chapter from one of your books, Lost Mishawaka. And we'll get into the details of that here in a second. But just want to provide a quick overview of Lost Mishawaka and what it is, and why you wrote it.
Sure. Lost Mishawaka is another one of my books that's a collection of essays on different topics from Mishawaka history.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not one subject for the entire book, but various shorter essays. And the theme for this book is things that have been lost, obviously, whether that's a building that no longer stands or a business that no longer exists, or some event or activity that no longer occurs. And here with Centerpoint Tower, it's a little different type of situation where it's something that never was. So it's an idea that has been lost in the sense that it never came to fruition.
And I love that kind of stuff because it just gets my curiosity. It sparks my curiosity. And it just makes you think, what if,
Right.
And that's what we are here to talk about today is a chapter you wrote in your book called Centerpoint Tower, Mishawaka's Landmark That Never Was. And I love the way you started the chapter. You wrote kind of a fictional newspaper headline for October of 2020. Quote, local leaders were on hand yesterday to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the groundbreaking for what was formerly the tallest building in northern Indiana, downtown Mishawaka's Centerpoint Tower. Now, we're going to get into some nitty-gritty details, but just a brief overview. What was the potential Centerpoint Tower?
Centerpoint Tower was the plan for a 33-story building that would have towered above downtown Mishawaka. It would have stood close to the intersection of Race and 3rd Street.
Okay.
So for people familiar with downtown Mishawaka, it's the south half or so of the Mishawaka Penn Harris Public Library's branch. So south half of where their parking lot is today. But Paul Jernigan, the architect, he also had plans to rejuvenate downtown Mishawaka. So Centerpoint Tower was the centerpiece of his plan, but then he had lots of other things that he was going to do to transform downtown Mishawaka and to make it really the retail center of the St. Joseph Valley.
What drew you to the story at first?
Well, what really drew me, I knew about it. I knew that this plan had existed. I didn't know it in much detail, though. But the Mishawaka Penn Harris Public Library, it's probably about 2018 or so, they gave the Mishawaka Historical Museum the archive of documents from Paul Jernigan about Centerpoint Tower. So we have all of his papers. And in fact, I'm holding one of the publications that he made in the late 1960s, but his drawings, his notes, the research that he did in other cities around the country, in researching like cost per square foot for construction, rentals, just to get ideas for what would make his vision more successfully implemented. So we have several boxes of things from Paul Jernigan, and it's like that was almost all of the research I needed to do is just to go through those things and to turn it into a narrative of what happened, particularly between 1966 and 1971. What were the stages that he and the city of Mishawaka went through, and what happened to the vision that he had?
Yes. That's neat. You have almost first, that is first primary source.
These are primary sources.
There.
Right.
That is
and it's just really compelling. Paul Jernigan's one of my favorite Mishawakans. In general, the Jernigan family. I find I'm always kind of intersecting into the Jernigan family because they go back to 1872 in Mishawaka. Paul's grandfather, Edward Jernigan, was the owner and publisher of the Mishawaka Enterprise. So all those articles that I come across in the late 19th, early 20th century, Edward Jernigan was involved with those. And then Paul's father, Ralph, was an attorney in Mishawaka. He was the city attorney for a while. So I occasionally am writing about Ralph Jernigan. And then, of course, Paul, with some of the work that he did, not only with the plans for Centerpoint Tower and the downtown rejuvenation, but he was the architect who designed the expansion of the cave at Mishawaka High School. So he's a Mishawaka High School graduate, class of 25. So he was in the first class to graduate from the new building. And then in 1957, 58, he develops the plans to expand the cave to build that south half of it. He also did a classroom addition along Gernhardt, added to the high school in the early 1960s. He did an addition to LaSalle Elementary School in Mishawaka and other projects in Mishawaka. And actually, last year, I gave the commencement speech at Mishawaka High School, and I talked about some of these significant alumni that were good for being role models for the graduates. And Paul Jernigan made my list.
Of course,
of people that I talked about. And of course, we're standing it was at Steel Stadium that day. We were standing right alongside the classroom addition
that he
Paul designed. So I could literally point behind me
That's cool.
and refer to the building that all those graduates had used that Paul Jernigan had designed. And the Jernigans, they're still in Mishawaka, not under that last name,
Okay.
but Paul Jernigan's great-nephew still lives in Mishawaka and operates a business in Mishawaka. So they have literally been here for 154 years.
Wow.
The Jernigan family and their
Deep.
descendants.
And in researching varied stories of Mishawaka, they're woven in and out throughout.
Right. And so the Jernigans, they've always been prominent
I
and
got
contributing. And so when I write about significant things going on in Mishawaka, usually there's a Jernigan.
And in a part you mentioned earlier about writing about it is you have to be able to take everything that was happening. You have to be able to try to provide the readers context at that time and really telling all that into a story.
Right.
And so this particular story about Centerpoint Tower, we would be neglectful if we didn't talk about 1960s and the state of not just Mishawaka's downtown, but across the country, really. You wrote that in the mid-1960s, downtown Mishawaka was facing its most significant challenges since the Great Mishawaka Fire of 1872. Why is that?
There are a couple factors involved. One is just a lot of aging buildings, and the maintenance on those is always a challenge, even into the present day. But then also the retail that we had so long associated with downtown Mishawaka, it was being challenged by Town and Country Shopping Center, which opens in 1961. And so that's like the premier retail site in the Mishawaka area at that time. And then other commercial properties along McKinley, basically from Logan Street, beyond to Division Street or so, that commercial strip that we're still familiar with. So that's a real tough competitor for downtown Mishawaka.
Easy parking.
And its merchants. Oh yeah, huge, massive parking lots. So there's that. And then there's also the whole, what I refer to as urban renewal mania. I think the federal government, they were paying cities, subsidizing their demolition of historic buildings.
Quite literally.
Now, mind you, some of those buildings probably were better off that they were removed. Some had to go, but the things that were lost in Mishawaka and South Bend's downtown was even more decimated by urban renewal. And so there's that pressure. And the city leaders, the redevelopment commission, they were fully on board with let's get rid of anything that we don't need. And there was pressure that was being caused by the need to construct two new facilities.
Okay.
One is the post office, which opens in 1970. And so that caused the Hotel Mishawaka to be demolished in 1968. And so that was the property that the city leaders had identified as the place for the new post office, because we'd outgrown the smaller 1915 post office that today is part of the library. So they just moved diagonally across the intersection of Church and 3rd Street. So we knew we were going to get a new post office. Where does it go?
Right.
And it cost us the most beautiful non-church
Hotel
landmark,
Mishawaka.
the Hotel Mishawaka. And then the other new thing that we needed was a new public library.
Okay.
We had outgrown the 1916 Carnegie Library on Hill Street.
Which is still there.
Jesus's. Yes. Yeah. We're so fortunate that building has survived its various transitions. And even by the mid-1960s, they knew that they were going to build the library there at the southeast corner of Church and Lincoln Way. And then it's been expanded a couple times since, but they knew it was coming. And so you've got these two new buildings that are basically in the same end of downtown. There's need for parking. And so the city leaders, they recognize we need to have more parking for what they refer to as a civic center, which essentially—
both of them, like the post office and the library,
together,
like a civic center little area.
And then they were thinking of reusing the old post office building as what they called a sub-courthouse.
Okay.
For the county. And essentially what happened later on in the 1970s was the county services building was built on Lincoln Way West, the 200 block of Lincoln Way West. And that does today what this county sub courthouse would have done.
I see.
So they could potentially have had three buildings that were going to get a lot of use: the library, the sub courthouse, and the post office, all within almost a stone's throw of each other. And so, in terms of that part of the urban renewal of downtown in the 1960s, it's the need for parking that is driving what ultimately becomes the threat that the city makes to Paul Jernigan: sell us your land or else.
I want to take a moment to thank a great local partner of the show, the Mishawaka Historical Museum. I'm especially excited to be participating this summer on something really fun, the Mishawaka History Summer Bucket List. It's a curated list of 75 historical sites and experiences across the city designed to get people out exploring and connecting with Mishawaka's past in a hands-on way. I'll be visiting as many of those locations as I can, creating short, on-the-scene videos to share throughout the summer, so be on the lookout for those. You can pick up a free Mishawaka History Summer Bucket List booklet right at the museum at 121 South Main Street in downtown Mishawaka. It's a great way to guide your own local history adventure. And while you're there, make sure you take some time to explore inside. The museum has recently added over 160 new artifacts and historic images that are now on display, bringing even more of Mishawaka's story to life. Located in downtown Mishawaka, it's an easy, affordable stop. And whether you've lived here your whole life or are just getting to know the area, there's something for you. So get out, explore the bucket list this summer, and start your journey at the Mishawaka Historical Museum. Their website is linked in the show notes. Check it out to learn more. Speaking of that, that's literally what I was going to ask next. The Mishawaka Redevelopment Commission, quite frank, they just made an ultimatum for him, right? Talk to us about it.
And so this is about 1966. So we're actually here in April. It's April 25th, 1966. So 60 years ago this month. And then some of these events are occurring in May of 1966. Jernigan met with the Redevelopment Commission. And again, they were looking for additional parking on the block where the library and the potential sub-courthouse would be. And Jernigan owned the land along Race Street from Lincoln Way, where his office building was, what had been his grandfather's house, the Jernigan house, when Ed lived there.
So steeped in their family for generations.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the house to the south, which had a Race Street address, is 115 South Race. That was the house where Ralph and Estella Jernigan lived, so Paul's parents. And then I think Paul had acquired, there's one more house south of that along Race Street, and I'm not sure if that had already been demolished or not. But basically the strip of
so they
land,
owned all that right there.
All along, if you can imagine where the library's parking lot is today, that's more or less the footprint of the land that Jernigan owned. And so Jernigan definitely did not want to demolish the Jernigan house where his office was and some apartments and other retail space. It had been in his family. He was still using, he still had an active architectural firm there. He was willing ultimately to demolish the house at 115 South Race. His father had already died, and then the mother died, I think, around 1960. So he had still owned that house. But the city basically tells him, we want to buy this property, maybe not the Jernigan house on Lincoln Way, but everything south of it, to create a municipal parking lot.
Got it.
And so this is April 25th, 1966. This need for more parking. And they were willing to work with Jernigan a little bit. They were willing to give him a year to either dispose of or alter 115 South Race Street. They wanted it was like a wood frame building. They wanted it covered in and masonry, something that would be non-flammable. And they thought that would better fit the masonry library building that was going to be built, and then the old post
Got
office,
it.
which is made of limestone. And if no improvements were made,
Mhm.
then the redevelopment commission would acquire 115 and the corner property at Race and Third
Uh-huh.
that Jernigan also owned. So from there, they had the next event is on May 12th. Jernigan submitted what was called a private redevelopment proposal for 115 South Church.
And this was in response to the city
Yes,
giving him an ultimatum,
right,
basically. Yeah.
right,
And so he said, I'm here's my response. Here's my plan.
right. And there were also 2 garages involved. They were
Okay.
behind 115 and behind the Jernigan building, or the old Jernigan house on Lincoln Way. But what he proposes then in May is to investigate the feasibility of a high-rise apartment structure that he would build on that parcel of land. So the city had said, if you have plans to build something to improve the property, then we'll back off on the municipal parking lot idea and forcing you to sell to us. And so, like I say in the chapter, Jernigan had a choice to build or ultimately just to
Yeah.
sell, and so he decides to go big,
Yes, he did.
literally, to really go big, 33 stories. So he spends a year then, uh, doing research,
Uh-huh.
and we have his notes of,
That's cool.
buildings that he investigated, throughout the Midwest, and, looking at cost per square foot and
Yeah.
rental, and just, literally doing the research that
Uh-huh.
he had promised that he would do, just to see if this is a feasible thing. And so sometimes people, they come in the museum, they look at these 2 framed images that we have
Uh-huh.
of Center Point Tower, and, they think, or maybe they've heard, that he wasn't serious, that he just did this because he didn't wanna sell.
Right,
So
right.
he concocted this
Mhm.
artist rendering and all these blueprints. But again, I have the archive.
A lot of time,
Yeah,
energy,
he was
effort,
serious.
emotions.
We have his handwritten notes
Wow.
about, these issues
Yes.
regarding square footage and rentals. He literally did his research,
Yeah.
and was sincere in pursuing this plan. It wasn't just to buy time,
Right.
to hold off the city. And so he's doing this work over the next year, and then he submitted his report, his findings, on July 1st, 1967, to the Redevelopment Commission. And that was the first time that he introduced the term Center Point Tower.
Okay.
So he had described generally a high-rise building.
Yeah.
He didn't have a name for it in 1966,
Mhm.
but a year later, he does. And we can talk further about what would have been in that plan, but it's July 1st, 1967, that he goes to the Redevelopment Commission with this document saying, here's what I'm proposing and would like to go forward with.
Let's talk a little bit about the details of the plan, and then we can talk about kind of the reaction to it.
Yes.
What did he propose, in July and August of 1967?
Well, first off, the Jernigan house, or Jernigan building, we use both terms there on Lincoln Way, it would remain. So he was not going to demolish that. But then the Center Point Tower itself, it's
I don't mean to chuckle, but it's quite involved.
yes,
I mean,
it's impressive.
it is.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
one word you could use for
Yeah.
it, is it's impressive. 33 stories. The ground floor would have included retail spaces.
Okay.
So the ground floor would have been larger than just the footprint of
Yeah.
the circular cylindrical
Mhm.
tower. The tower, it would have been 50 feet in diameter.
Mhm.
So each of the floors 50 feet across, and it's all circular shape.
Mhm.
But the ground floor would have extended further north. So really, this plan for Center Point Tower, the whole building, would have been about 2/3 or almost 3/4 of the distance from Third to Lincoln Way.
Got it. Got it.
And
Almost
then-
a whole, yeah,
Yeah,
almost a whole block,
almost.
yeah.
But then the Jernigan house, the
Would have been
Jernigan
there.
building, takes up the north end of that property.
Got it.
So there would have been some kind of like deck above that first floor where it would have been like an outdoor plaza area, but there would have been retail on the ground floor, and then in the basement, there would have been some additional retail, and then either 2 or 4 levels of parking, underground parking.
In what the city was ultimately looking for
Yes,
too, is the
right,
parking.
right,
Right.
and I think Paul recognized if you're gonna have this
Of
building,
course.
you have to have places for people to
Yep.
park, and he had different configurations, but potentially the maximum would have been spaces for 130 cars on 4 levels of below street level parking. Um, so ground floor retail, 9 floors of offices, and some of those would have been lawyers' offices because, again, he's thinking in terms of the sub courthouse.
Yes, a little connection, a little partnership with
Right.
that.
A
Absolutely.
natural
Yep.
thing he considered. 18 floors of apartments, and those apartments, there could have been either configurations for either 1, 2, or 3 apartments per floor. And the actual space on those apartment floors, and really all of the floors, um, the building would have been built in such a way that there were no permanent walls.
Okay.
So it's whatever
Flexible. So
flexible
folks
walls
can
you
they
wanted
be
to
more
put
flexible in
in.
the size of the apartment.
And then all of this is accessible through an adjacent attached elevators tower.
Okay.
It would have had 3 elevators, 2 sets of emergency stairs, so that the elevators are not going through the cylindrical part of the building, taking up space.
Space.
Because again, it's only 50 feet
Yeah,
in
that's not
diameter.
too wide. Yeah.
Right. So there's that part of it, and then near the top, a 3-story revolving restaurant. 1 floor would have been for the kitchen, and then 2 floors, like, with 2-story
Yeah.
windows,
That's
which would have,
crazy.
given spectacular
Yeah.
views all the way you could see well into
Oh, of
Michigan,
course.
and then it gets even better. At at the top, above the restaurant, was a swimming pool with a dome, a clear acrylic dome
Uh-huh.
on top. And then, atop the elevator tower, would have been a 76-foot, television antenna. So that would bring the total height of the structure to 416 feet, 340 feet to the top of the elevator tower, which was just slightly taller than the top of the acrylic
Mhm.
dome for the swimming pool, but then 416 all the way to the top. And had this been built around 1970, it would have been the tallest inhabitable structure in northern Indiana.
Yes.
Just slightly taller than what existed in Fort Wayne at the time. And then
Okay.
a few years later, there was a building in Fort Wayne that was built that was
Uh-huh.
a little taller. So taller than anything in downtown South Bend,
Right,
but
right,
that's
right.
how the articles referred to it as the, potentially the tallest building in northern Indiana.
That's just that's just wild. And when folks when you read the chapter in the book, I mean, Pete lays it out and describes it all, and we really get a sense of how it would have just changed the area. I mean, my goodness. So I love this part. Parts of the building were to depict scenes from local history that he would have selected by a jury of historically qualified Mishawaka citizens in a little competition among schools. And earlier you mentioned his love of Mishawaka and his deep ties, and that kind of backs that up, right?
Yes. Yep. Paul Jernigan, was a Mishawaka patriot.
Yeah.
He knew his family's history, was interested in history, and he also was aware that he had this elevator tower that was concrete. He had to do something to it to make it look like other than something the Soviets would have built in, in the
Yes,
Cold
at that
War.
time, literally.
And so there would have been windows, like, going up the full length of the tower, and then he would have put some kind of, like, sort of like a decorative grill work, stained glass windows, it's been described as. So with each floor, like, that the elevators could stop at, you'd look out the window and you would be able to see this
Cool.
historical, artwork or a
Yeah.
mural of some kind, some scene or episode from from local history. So the key is that it had to be visible from inside the building, because otherwise at the 28th floor, what are you going to see from down below?
Yeah.
You're going to see that, oh, there's something up there.
Yeah.
But people inside the building could look out these windows and see a
That's
particular
neat.
work of art on that floor. Then they can go up one more floor and it's another work of art. And so this is really kind of a cool thing. It never got beyond just the idea stage.
Of
So you
course.
wonder, what would the 30-some panels have been?
In the late 60s.
In the late 60s,
Yeah.
right. They had a lot less history than we did.
Yeah.
So
It's curious. It's
Yeah.
neat. I love stuff like that.
And it's, I refer to it as, it would have been the largest work of art in St. Joseph County.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true. So when he did unveil his plan and unveil his vision to basically to the community and to the redevelopment board, I mean, he went all in. He had booklets, drawings, and like you mentioned, he wasn't just doing this just to do it. I mean, he legitimately. What was the initial feedback on the presentation of it all?
It was actually better than what you might think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of what makes the case for this is he had this wonderful color drawing made by Worthington Associates of Kansas City, Kansas. So they took his drawings, his schematics, and turned it into a really compelling color work of art. And he included that in all of his booklets, and we have that image hanging in the museum. So that he knew he had to sell this, and a drawing like that, an artist rendering, sells a project more compellingly than the schematics or a blueprint.
Absolutely.
That's just always true.
Yep.
So in terms of the response, Len Girardi was the longtime head of the Redevelopment Commission, and he was around into the 1990s. I knew Len Girardi, and here he is in his younger days, tearing down lots of historic buildings in Mishawaka. But he actually greeted it favorably.
Yeah.
He believed that the best redevelopment is done by the private sector. And I'm sure city leaders today would agree with that they don't want to pay for things.
Right.
But if you can facilitate the private sector doing it, all the better. And he basically said that the Redevelopment Commission would be ready to assist. So, it was not like he was rejecting it or saying, this is crazy. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting. If you'd like to go forward with this, we're here to help you. And it was publicly unveiled then on August 1st, 1967. There was a meeting that Jernigan had. He invited community leaders. And then it got into the media, and he shared all this with the Mishawaka Enterprise, the South Bend Tribune. And there was, as you might imagine, lots of discussion around town. It was the topic of conversation.
Of course.
And the president of one local bank told Jernigan that if Jernigan could get the tenants signed up, the bank would make sure that the financing was available to build it. And so that probably was First National Bank of Mishawaka, because Mishawaka Federal Savings was right across the street, but they were in that era just doing pretty much home loans.
Yeah, smaller.
So while he never specified which bank,
you gotta
as I'm thinking about it, I'm 90% sure it must have been First National Bank. So the key there is get the tenants, sign them up.
Yep.
And we'll do the financing.
Right.
The Mishawaka Enterprise, they wrote about this, and they had an editorial. It would have been Edith Enos was the editor and publisher at that time, and her quote was, "Yes, of course, why not?" And she also referred to it as a bold, creative concept.
It was.
And another quote was, "Should be given very serious consideration."
Mm-hmm.
So
no, that's serious. I mean, that is
pretty good as a response.
Right.
If that's what Jernigan is hearing, it's like, that's pretty much what you want.
Right.
And then Jernigan placed ads for Centerpoint Tower in the newspaper.
Okay.
Starting in early 1968.
Okay.
And he also posted a copy of that ad on the door of his office or the building there on Lincoln Way. And it was posted from March of 1968 to January of 1971. And we have a note in the archives where he acknowledges that, "Hey, I posted this on the front of my building," but he got no inquiries.
Wow.
Not a single one
That is
in response to that, and I don't know if he was getting anything in response to the newspaper advertisements, but at least what he posted on his door. And then he has a handwritten notation, that I have in the archives where he acknowledges that, nobody expressed an interest, and then he wrote, "Oh, Mishawaka." It's like, "Come on, people, where are you? I'm coming up with this great idea." It's like, are you that apathetic or unwilling to take a chance? So, "Oh, Mishawaka."
That's just telling.
And it was with an exclamation mark, but it wasn't excitement. It was
No, it was like more a little perturbed.
Yes,
a lot
it's
of
like,
perturbed.
"Oh, come on."
This episode of Round the Bend Now and Then is brought to you by In Rug Co. Studio and Gift Shop, one of the most unique and creative small businesses that you'll find anywhere in our area. Located right on Mishawaka Avenue, directly across the street from Central Park, In Rug Co. isn't your typical shop. It's part studio, part gallery, and part experience. They specialize in handcrafted, one-of-a-kind rugs and home goods that you simply won't find anywhere else. Whether you're looking to add something bold to your home, find a truly original gift, or just want to browse and be inspired, this is the kind of place that you've got to see for yourself. And now, they've added something extra sweet right next door with Talking Horse Ice Cream Stand. After you check out the shop, walk over and grab some ice cream. It's the perfect pairing for a summer stop along Mishawaka Avenue. If you haven't stopped in yet, make it a point. Head over to In Rug Co. Studio and Gift Shop, right across the street from Central Park in Mishawaka. And don't forget to check out Talking Horse Ice Cream Stand while you're there. Learn more at indianarugco.com. Support local, support creativity, and tell them that Round the Bend sent you. And he even had a bigger vision for the area.
Yes.
The Center Point Tower, like you said earlier, was just one little part. He imagined department stores, pedestrian malls, even a bridge across the river, huh? He called it the St. Joseph Valley Regional Center.
Yes.
And he even dove deeper and provided like a 22-point outline to all that.
Yes. And this is where it really gets amazing. The Center Point Tower is amazing because of its height.
Yeah.
And especially when you think about the surrounding structures that it would be compared to.
Yeah.
Across the street is the First Methodist Church. The top of its 4-pinnacled steeple is 119 feet.
And this would have been over 400.
Right. The tallest structure in downtown Mishawaka was the Unirail smokestack, built in 1951. It was 250 feet tall.
Almost double that.
So, yeah, this is way beyond that. Yep. And of course, St. Joe Church is 180 feet. And so Center Point Tower would have dwarfed all these structures. So it gets a lot of the attention just because of the spectacular size and relative to the buildings surrounding it. But the St. Joseph Valley Regional Center was the plan that he came up with. When he was announcing Center Point Tower, he said, I also am going to prepare these plans to revitalize downtown Mishawaka. Again, for the problems that we had identified earlier, old buildings, pressure from urban renewal, retail competition from McKinley and from Town and Country. He recognized that downtown Mishawaka was kind of ailing and could be so much more than it was in the mid-1960s and so much more than what it seemed to be headed toward. So what he was trying to do is reverse the decline of downtown Mishawaka and wanted to make it the outstanding central business district in the St. Joseph Valley. Basically, he was trying to take on downtown South Bend.
Yeah, of course,
and defeat downtown South Bend.
Yep.
When I said before that he's a Mishawaka patriot, he was tired of Mishawaka just kind of accepting that it was this little satellite of South Bend. And of course, that's the era where there still was retail in downtown South Bend. South Bend hadn't killed its downtown with Scottsdale Mall, or then what happens in Mishawaka and Grape Road in the 1970s and after that just sucks the life, the retail life out of downtown South Bend in the same way that Mishawaka's retail gets its life sucked out of it. So he has this 22-point outline. And among the things that he envisioned for downtown Mishawaka were 3 large department stores. One of them would have been just east of Center Point Tower, on the same block where the Beeger Mansion is today, but he would have saved the Beeger Mansion, and just kind of worked around it.
Yeah.
And then the other one would have been on Mill Street, so on the west end of the downtown. Part of it would have been south of Lincoln Way, part of it would have been north of Lincoln Way.
Okay.
And then the third department store would have been at the intersection of Mishawaka Avenue and North Main Street, so on the north bank of the river.
Other side of the river.
And so these are department stores probably of the same size of what was later built at University Park Mall.
Yeah.
So today,
Sears, Ayers, those type
right,
big anchor type.
He was
buildings.
looking to attract those kinds of department stores. So that would have been the big jolt for bringing retail to downtown Mishawaka. He also envisioned covered pedestrian structures. So Lincoln Way, at the least, maybe the 100 block in each direction, maybe as far as 200 block, would have been a pedestrian mall, similar to what South Bend did in the 1970s downtown. And there would have been covered like awnings. And then he even envisioned walkways that were sidewalks that were conveyor belts.
Like in the airports.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you wouldn't even have to walk.
Yeah.
All you had to do was
Just
stand.
shoot you right to the next store.
To get from store A on the east end east of Center Point Tower to store B there on Mill Street. Also, the Main Street Bridge, he wanted to put stores along the bridge.
Wow.
And the comparison is to the Ponte Vecchio in Florence.
Okay.
And for listeners who've been to Florence, you know exactly what we're talking about here. But that's one of the most famous bridges in Europe. And there actually are buildings that are part of the bridge.
Really?
So as you're walking along the bridge, you could go into a store building. And so he referred to it as an American Ponte Vecchio.
That's wild.
He also wanted to build a civic auditorium that he would have attached to the east end of what then was City Hall.
Okay.
City Hall was at First and Church. And this actually was an old dream of Paul Jernigan's. I have a document from the 1930s from him where he wanted to build a civic auditorium in downtown Mishawaka. So he's throwing that in there as well. And then there would have been some plaza area that would have extended east of the civic auditorium. And there's more. There would have been a north-south thoroughfare along Union Street.
Okay.
With a new bridge that would need to have been constructed that would have taken Union Street over the river through Central Park and then connect up to Division Street.
Okay.
And then that would potentially allow for Division Street to be a traffic corridor that would go all the way to the toll road.
Holy moly.
And he was envisioning a Mishawaka toll road exit. Now, there wasn't a toll road exit until 1983 or so. And they were talking about it here in the 1960s. And Paul recognized, again, as a Mishawaka patriot, hey, we're a city back then of almost 40,000. Why don't we have an exit on the toll road?
Yeah.
And so the Division Street connector would have potentially gone all the way north to the toll road. He would have preserved most of the historic structures in downtown Mishawaka. Some of the buildings would have been lost to be able to fit this in, but you know, the Methodist Church, the St. Joe Church, First National Bank building. And he basically said anything that can be saved will be saved and incorporated into the design for his department stores. The bank building, the First National Bank branch that was at Mishawaka Avenue and Main Street, the building still stands.
Still there,
he would have incorporated that into the department store that would have been there. So he wasn't just looking to clear cut downtown Mishawaka. It would have been this mix of these massive department stores.
That's crazy.
Next to or across the street from a 1870s building. The Phoenix building still would have been standing.
Hey, in your in all of your deep knowledge and deep research of Mishawaka, has there ever been anybody who came forward with this bold of a plan kind of in a similar way, like to get retail and to get everything there?
This is the one that I'm most familiar with, and I
Uh-huh.
think the most aggressive and visionary
Yeah.
plan. As I've been thinking about Paul Jernigan, it made me think also a little bit about T. Brooks Bradamus.
Yes. Okay.
Um, and I didn't mention that in
Uh-huh.
the chapter, but as I've been rereading it prior to our conversation, I was thinking, Paul Jernigan and T. Brooks Bradamus, they had some similarities. Bradamus was always coming up with ideas.
Okay.
Um,
He
eh,
did 100 Center, right?
yeah,
Or
he
he
did. He
took
did the
over for 100
100
Center, yeah.
Center and built the the high rise, the elderly high
Uh-huh.
rise that's next to the 100 Center. And he was coming up with these ideas, and a lot of times people thought, "No way, we're not gonna do
Yeah.
that, that's crazy." But he did accomplish some of the things that he
That's a
envisioned,
neat comparison.
and, we need to have those kinds of
Mhm.
people,
Mhm.
um, and they should ideally come from the private sector,
Mhm.
but people who are willing to come up with visionary ideas and say, "Hey, we could do this, maybe we could do
Yep.
that," and maybe maybe 25% of if 25% of their
Right.
their ideas got actually accomplished and turned into buildings, that would be an accomplishment.
Absolutely.
But what we don't need are just people thinking, "Oh gosh, there's nothing I can do."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
This whole apathy thing
Yep.
that we struggle with in Mishawaka.
Mhm.
There's a tremendous amount of apathy,
Mhm.
or just the sense that City Hall is gonna take care of it,
Right.
or some other developer from outside the area, they're gonna do these things, rather than local people
Yep.
coming up with ideas to improve
Uh-huh.
the place that they live,
Yep.
not just for their own benefit, but for the whole community
And the
and
future.
into the future. Right.
Yes.
So,
And yeah, and it truly does take bold thinking and risk taking um and Jernigan obviously did all that, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, and there were a couple other things that were part of this plan. I'll just add those. Instead of putting the post office where the Hotel Mishawaka was,
Okay.
he thought a better location for it would be, between Union Street, basically west of Union Street
Mhm.
and south of 4th Street. Today, there are houses in that
Okay.
area, but the back of the post office then would have been up against the railroad tracks.
Okay, I got
And
it.
so
So Bonnie
he
Dunes ended up is that
there'll be
area-ish?
just a little to the east of
Okay.
Bonnie Doon.
Got it, got
It's
it.
like with the area where the underpass is today,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then there's, Kristen's Cafe.
Yes, I
There's
know.
these little
Yep,
streets that kinda go back
yep.
to the railroad tracks, and that would have allowed him to save the Hotel Mishawaka. He wanted to renovate it and keep it as the hotel in downtown, and then he also was interested in having the right of way along the tracks, the railroad tracks, the
Okay.
Conrail, or then I guess it was New York Central or Penn Central tracks.
Mhm.
Um, that would have been an east-west thoroughfare to kind of bypass the downtown.
Got it, yes,
Um
because the downtown would now be really more
Right,
pedestrian-ish,
right.
you know?
Now you could still drive on Main Street, you'd
Mhm.
have Union Street, so those are the 2 north-south
Mhm.
routes, but he wanted to facilitate traffic flow east-west,
Got it,
and so that too was part of the plan.
got it. You had mentioned earlier about he didn't get really too much interest in his apartments, and what
Yeah,
ultimately when did it become clear that it wasn't going to
sure,
happen?
sure, and with the Centerpoint Tower, really by 1971, it seems to
Okay.
be the point where he
Backed
he
off
backs off,
and
or the city said, "Okay, you've had enough
yeah,
time. We've been doing this for 5 years
yeah,
now." Um, or either that or Jernigan realizes, "Okay, this is just not going anywhere.
uh-huh,
Nobody has expressed interest in being a tenant," and so he couldn't get the financing for it. So
right,
it's a funding
of
issue
course.
based on lack of tenants.
Yep,
And so at that point, the city then does acquire some of his property, and Mishawakans will remember there was a little parking lot, along south of the Jernigan building
okay,
and east of what became the police station. That was
okay.
a municipal lot. It couldn't have had more than 30 parking
Mhm,
spaces, and it was always a competition to try to get one of those parking spaces
okay,
because, the library then they move in there in 1969, their
uh-huh,
new building, and they didn't have much parking. They had a row of parking spaces along the east side of the building, and so there was the municipal lot that the city was hoping for. Ultimately, the city won in their struggle to get municipal parking.
Yeah.
But we should also talk a little bit about the response to the St. Joseph Valley Regional Center. So the Centerpoint Tower, it's dead by 1971, and Paul just has to accept it. But I should point out, he kept all of his notes. That's how we have them.
Yeah.
And he continued adding to them. Like, I'm looking at a book here. This is one of the late 1960s copies of his proposal, but in it, he's added...
It's like a scrapbook.
Yes, some clippings from articles, even going into the early 80s of buildings that might have been similar to his, or redevelopment proposals that were similar to his. Essentially his way of saying, hey, people, this could have worked, but because you didn't care enough about it, we don't have it. So,
that's neat.
It's like he was continually vindicating himself, is that, hey, this would have been a workable plan, but you wouldn't follow through on it. But then the response to the St. Joseph Valley Regional Center, that was even less encouraging,
really,
than the Centerpoint Tower. Because, as I said earlier, there was a willingness, like, hey, this might be a good idea. Let's go forward with it. But Centerpoint Tower, while that might have seemed practical, but just couldn't get the financing, there was less favorable interest for the rest of it. Many thought that it was unrealistic to make downtown Mishawaka into the area's retail center.
Yeah.
And we have quotes, even that Jernigan had gotten from downtown businessmen, professionals. There was a doctor, there was owner of a clothing store downtown, basically saying, you're fighting an unrealistic battle. We'll never be able to compete with downtown South Bend. Well, of course, just wait 10 years.
That was crumbling too.
Wait 10 years, and of course, all that business is coming to the north side of Mishawaka. He also contacted representatives from Sears Roebuck. And they said they're perfectly happy with their store.
Yeah, they were
downtown
just
South
3
Bend.
miles away or 4 miles away.
And apparently they had a store in Elkhart. They said, well, the stores in South Bend and
right
Elkhart
between them.
are enough. And then Carson Peary Scott, which I don't think had any local stores, but they were a national department store. They said no. And I think they were the ones who said Mishawaka is too far afield. It's like, who ever heard of Mishawaka?
Yeah.
So we're not going to build something in downtown Mishawaka. And so his plans for rejuvenating downtown Mishawaka, that specific plan with those department stores and the covered walkways and civic auditorium, it went nowhere. But we can talk about some of the ways that his vision did eventually get implemented in one form or another in the years to come.
And now a brief word from one of our sponsors. I've been working with Dan Barry Insurance for over 25 years, and I can tell you from personal experience that they're the real deal. In a world where customer service can feel like a lost art, they've always taken care of me the right way, every single time. They're a locally owned agency with deep roots in our community, and that matters. When you call them, you're not getting a call center somewhere. You're talking to people who live here, who care about this area, and who genuinely want to help you and protect what matters most. Whether it's home, auto, business, or life insurance, they take the time to walk you through your options and make sure you're covered the right way, not just the easy way. If you're looking for an insurance agency you can trust, I highly recommend giving Dan Barry Insurance a call or check them out online at danbarryinsurance.com and tell them that Round the Bend sent you. Again, a big thanks to Dan Barry Insurance for supporting the show and for taking care of folks in our community the way they always have. And now, back to the episode. Let's talk about that. So his specific original vision of the Centerpoint Tower and the St. Joe Regional Center really never came to fruition. However, there are some ways that it did come to fruition. Let's talk about it.
And this is where it gets really interesting because it causes us to think about ways that history unfolded.
Yeah.
Again, the what if idea that we talked about. it's easy for us to look back or to look around us and say, well, this was meant to be.
Yes.
That all of this was fated. It was all destined. Of course, this building, this school is built here. That store is built there. That bridge is there. That's the only way it could have been.
Nope.
When that is not true.
Nope.
There are many alternate versions of history that could have unfolded. And the whole story of Center Point Tower and the St. Joseph Valley Regional Center, that's one direction that things could have gone.
Right.
We live in a kind of an alternate timeline, if you want to put it in science fiction terms, an alternate timeline where things went differently.
Right.
But if we look closely, you can see some ways that it didn't work, but also other ways that we kind of did the things that Paul was talking about. So the actual site of what would have been Center Point Tower, that's a parking lot.
Yeah.
So again, the city kind of got what they wanted.
Got what they
it's
wanted.
An even bigger parking lot than they would have imagined, but it's devoted to the library and its patrons. The old post office did not become a sub-courthouse.
Right.
We built the county services building along the east side of Mill Street, or actually closer to the Spring Street, Spring and Lincoln Way. But the old post office then became the police station.
Okay.
They had been down I think they were in the basement of the old city hall at First and Church, and they finally got the opportunity to move into some larger facilities. So that was about 1974 that they moved up Church Street and occupied the old post office. They were there for 21 years until a new police station was built on the site of the old city hall. So they're just moving back and forth. So there never was a north-south thoroughfare with a new bridge like he envisioned, but we have what we call now the Princess City Parkway that goes from the US 20 bypass on the south all the way basically to Heritage Square and Toscana Park, which are in Mishawaka, right up to the border with where the Granger subdivisions start. And it's really several streets that still officially bear their original names, like Church Street and Main Street, but it's all been more generally designated as Princess City Parkway. And that, if you ever walk in downtown Mishawaka, that is like a urban expressway.
Yeah.
And so Paul would say, yeah, I told you so. He just wasn't thinking that it was going to go down Church Street and up Main Street. He was going to build a whole new road.
Right. He was going to plow forward a new one.
Right. The mill, I think, is the closest thing that we have to Center Point
downtown, like right in Buter Park. Yes.
So the big, massive mill number 1 that was opened in 2019. It is as long horizontally as Center Point Tower would have been vertically.
Okay.
It's a massive building.
It is. It's huge. It is.
And it has apartments. There's 2 restaurants. There's one hair salon that's in there. So not a huge amount of retail space. There's no offices, but still the apartments. It has a swimming pool.
Yep.
It has a parking garage. And Paul Jernigan, who died in 1993, he'd look at the mill and say, hey, I told you, you could have saved a lot of space, though, if you would have built up. And so when I look at the Mill 1 today, and now we've built the Mill 2, which is about as large as Mill 1 is, I think of Paul Jernigan. And I think this is the 21st century version of Center Point Tower.
Yes.
Also, we did not build the department stores downtown, but what the city did do between 1974 and 1982 was clear 2 blocks, what we call the Northwest Block, where City Hall is today, and then the block to the west of it that went between Mill and Spring along Lincoln Way. And again, urban renewal mania. I refer to the destruction of the Northwest Block as probably the single biggest failure of public policy of our elected and appointed officials in City Hall in the 20th century. That never should have happened.
Yep.
But instead of building department stores, and Paul would have cleared out some buildings to build his department store there, instead of department stores, Liberty Mutual came in 1984, 85, built their building, and it's a 100,000 square foot building. So something almost as big as the department stores that Paul envisioned, but instead an office building. And then Liberty Mutual, things change in the world of insurance and being able to work from home, and the building becomes available.
What's there now?
The city gets it and turns it into the police station, utilities, and city hall offices.
Just amazing how it all just over the years.
So, Paul was kind of thinking in those terms a few years before that property is cleared and something large is built there.
Right.
Retail in downtown Mishawaka continued to decline.
Like other downtowns, too.
And we still struggle with that. And I think there's maybe 8 businesses in downtown Mishawaka, 8 or 10 that are retail. And that includes 2 gas stations with their convenience store.
Good Lord.
So there's not a whole lot left. Thank goodness we have Mishawaka Antiques.
Yes.
And there's and there's a CVS and things like that. But, retail just continued to decline. The buildings are mostly occupied in the central part of downtown Mishawaka. Some of them are restaurants, some of them are offices, but I'm old school. I'd like some more retail. And of course, I'm also speaking as representative of the Mishawaka Historical Museum.
Right in the heart of it.
We took a former retail building and turned it into something that's not retail. So I guess I'm guilty of it too.
But Pete, you're providing the city and the area with a lot more than just a storefront that sells a trinket. I mean, you're providing knowledge and you're telling, our area's story.
Right.
So
we like to think so. So thank you. But
for sure,
there are some spaces available that could become retail, and it's just a struggle to get people to be entrepreneurs. Because
risk.
What would go into these downtown buildings, they're not going to be chain stores because they're all up north. It would be some local entrepreneur, people like in Rugco or Interior Elements, who are willing to risk it all to fill a small space and to try to attract customers with interesting products and good customer service. So retail has languished, and it's gotten worse since Paul Jernigan's time. And then think also about those department stores. Well, they didn't open in downtown Mishawaka or the north side of the Main Street Bridge. They eventually open, and they do find Mishawaka, even though these people in the late 60s are saying, well, we're okay in South Bend and Elkhart, or Mishawaka's too far afield. But University Park Mall opens in 1979, and it has, count them, 4 department stores when it opens. And so the department stores did come to Mishawaka. And talk about being far afield.
I was going to say,
literally built in a former
I was literally going to say that.
And so one of the what ifs that's involved in this whole story is if Paul Jernigan had gotten his way around 1970, 72, and built the 4 department stores, made downtown Mishawaka the retail center of the St. Joseph Valley, there's no need to build University Park Mall.
Right.
And if you don't have the anchor stores, you're not going to build the mall. Now, mind you, eventually things might have been built out there, but all the retail would have been in downtown Mishawaka. Grape Road maybe is still a cornfield. A road passing through cornfields, maybe even into our present day. So that's one of the what ifs. And then also there's the issue of the downtown hotel. So he was willing to save and renovate the Hotel Mishawaka, which had about 60 rooms, so not huge by modern standards. And city leaders, they are still trying to attract a downtown hotel. They tore down the Hotel Mishawaka. Again, that's Urban Renewal Redevelopment Commission. They knocked it down. We lost that building. And this city today, they have a space all picked out
Yeah,
for
they
the
do.
hotel just
Right by
east.
the former police
Yes,
station, right by the
right,
former, city hall, and right there, matter of
right.
fact, they covered up, uh, the raceway there in
Yeah,
order to draw that hotel here,
yeah,
and it's still
all of the, site prep that
Yep.
needed to be done to build a structure there, they've done, and, we have 20 hotels on the north side of town. For
Uh-huh.
years, we struggled to get any hotel in Mishawaka, and then by the mid-90s, they start flocking, but we just can't
Yeah.
get one to build a nice hotel in downtown Mishawaka. So that's a failure.
Yep.
We have to call it that. It's a failure. They've tried, but they
Mhm.
failed. But Paul Jernigan would say, "Hey,
Yeah.
we had a hotel.
Yeah.
I would have saved it, and there would have been 60 more rooms
Uh-huh.
than what you have now in
Yep.
terms of hotels in downtown Mishawaka."
And the historic aspect of it too.
Yeah.
Some of the reasons why his vision probably never came to fruition could have been some of the practical aspects of his design. What were some of the problems with it?
Sure. And we, for us, we can see this more clearly looking back.
Yes.
Hindsight, historical hindsight is 2020.
Uh-huh.
As you go forward, though, with any kind of plan, you're kind of walking into a bank of fog.
Yeah.
And so some of these things are clear for us to see today. I think there would have been inadequate parking on the
Yeah.
block where Center Point Tower is.
Mhm.
And even though, he had the parking garage with potentially 4 levels, 130 cars, I don't know that that would have been enough
Yeah.
for the offices and apartments, and then you throw in like a 200-seat restaurant,
Uh-huh.
plus the library was still gonna be on that block,
Yes.
and the sub-courthouse that they had planned with all of its employees. So, just not enough
Yeah.
parking on that block, and mind you, there are more vehicles today than there were in the 1960s. There are probably twice as many cars
Yeah.
in Mishawaka today as there were then, but we know parking drives all
Yep.
kinds of development decisions, and he didn't have enough.
Mhm.
Also, there was too much going on that block.
Yeah, it seems
Sub-courthouse,
like it.
library, Jernigan Building,
Uh-huh.
and Center Point Tower.
Oh, just this
Um,
430 something foot thing.
and then, with his plans for the St. Joseph Valley Regional Center, um, way too much traffic
Yeah.
would have been in downtown Mishawaka. Now, maybe these department stores, maybe they would have had some parking garages in them, but, if he wants all this retail, the gridlock of
Yeah.
downtown Mishawaka
It would have
would
been.
have been amazing. Also, he did not envision that the library would expand its building.
Yeah.
The original 1969 library there along Lincoln Way is maybe a third of the
Uh-huh.
size of the structure it is today. Um, they put on an addition in 1984, then the 1998 edition. He didn't foresee,
Right.
at least in his documents, that it would need to grow larger.
Right.
So what would have had to happen is the library would have had to move elsewhere.
Most definitely.
And the success of the whole plan for the retail rejuvenation of downtown Mishawaka was hinging on the success of the department stores.
Yep.
If they succeeded, then all this would be great.
Right.
His plan would look brilliant and be very successful. But if they failed, and we know today we lost Sears
Uh-huh.
from the University Park Mall, it is possible for these giant department
Yeah.
stores to no longer exist,
Of course.
then we might be having to redevelop these
Mhm.
massive buildings, 3 huge department stores
Mhm.
in downtown Mishawaka. What do you do with them? Well, redevelopment commission, they like to demolish buildings.
Uh-huh.
They'd have come in and cleared it, and then we would have built something else there.
It's true.
And Paul also did not envision a future uh, without Uniroyal downtown.
Yes.
When you read this,
Yes.
his redevelopment plans don't really go into the Uniroyal site because in his mind in
Yes.
1967,
It's always gonna be
it's
there.
always going to be there. It's too big to not be
Uh-huh.
there. It's too big to fail. And so, he doesn't envision, oh, we could build something where
Yeah,
the Uniroyal buildings are. He also doesn't envision a river walk
Mhm.
and the riverside parks like we have, like Buter Park.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
he envisions the public plaza to the east of the Civic
Uh-huh.
Auditorium, There would have been like a public area there, but he doesn't really have a plan for trying to expand the
Yeah.
green space of downtown Mishawaka. And so that's something that um, by the early 1990s, city leaders are talking about a river walk.
Yeah.
But that was not a subject of conversation from Paul or
Not a lot of people
perhaps anybody
anyway.
else.
Yeah.
Because Uniroyal is there and they can't imagine it going anyplace else.
Yeah. Right. Why do you think, I know me, I love stories like this and things that are planned but never happen. Why do you think that stories like this are just so fascinating?
Yeah, I think it makes us consider the what ifs of history. It makes us appreciate and think a little more deeply about why things are the way they are in the environment that we inhabit.
Yes.
And most of the time, we don't think about that. We live our lives. We use the buildings around us. We do our errands. We go to work. And we don't think about, well, gee, what if this building had never been built?
Right.
What else would be standing here right now? Or if this street had never been put through what once was farmland?
Yep.
Or if this area had not been redeveloped, what would be there today? And it gives us a moment to pause and to think a little more deeply about how history has unfolded, how it's all worked out. And then, of course, it makes you think about the future.
Right.
And what will be the impact of choices that we make today and in the next few years. Things, again, could go in different ways.
Right.
And if we pause and think, we might be able to speculate about what are some of those different directions that the future could go. And then we're reminded that we have choices.
Yep.
We can make good choices today and in the near future in our planning so that when people look back 50 or 100 years from now, they say, oh, that was a real good thing. I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we built that river walk. I'm glad we put that park there. Or we built this building. Or I'm glad we didn't build that building.
Right.
And maybe some people would look back today and say, I'm glad we didn't build Centerpoint Tower.
Right.
Other people would say, gee, I wish that would have been cool. I wish we would have done that.
Definitely. All right. Well, hey, anything more we want to add or?
No.
I think
appreciate the opportunity to
talk
about Centerpoint Tower.
I love stuff like this, and I think our listeners will be interested as well. So thank you, Pete.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. An extra special thanks to Pete DeKever for your time, knowledge, and most importantly for your passion in keeping Mishawaka history alive. Again, folks, check out the Mishawaka Historical Museum and learn all about our local history. Join us again next time as we learn more about South Bend and Mishawaka's now and then.